Mhm.
exactly what a shadow senator is.
Yeah.
So, can you briefly explain
Yeah.
what your newly elected position entails?
Yeah, I mean, this is the question I get most often. First question I get usually when I'm talking to people is, well, what is a shadow senator? So, obviously in DC, we don't have any voting senators or representatives. And so the DC government has created two non-voting, often called shadow senators, and one non-voting shadow representative to be our elected advocates to fight for DC statehood, to fight to protect home rule and protect our rights from attack by Congress, and basically to be our elected lobbyists for our rights before the U.S. Senate. And I tell people DC is basically like a colony of the federal government right now. We don't have any representation in Congress, and the federal government has allowed us to establish a local government, but it can and it regularly does, overturn our local laws to score cheap political points, advance someone's political career. In fact, they can actually abolish our local government entirely at any time if they wanted to. And so my job is to fight back against those attacks. And when the federal government is doing things that impact DC, to make sure that DC's voice is heard and that we get the federal government working positively with us and not negatively.
Thank you for that explanation because we had a lot of new voters this year, kids coming out of high school and stuff like that. And they're just starting to learn about politics and the positions that our electeds hold.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
thank you for that.
no problem. And it's not just young people who are not sure about this role. I think a lot of people can learn more about it and learn what this position can do. Fun fact: Jesse Jackson was actually DC's first ever shadow senator back in 1990, and so they're definitely big shoes to fill. But I'm excited to get to work.
That's awesome.
Sounds good.
Take it over past
So,
Mike. Let's go.
so, quick question: what can you tell us your journey? What led you uh to running for DC Shadow Senator? First of all, allow DC to kind of know who you are.
Yeah.
Are you a native Washingtonian? Those type of things. But ultimately, what made you decide to run for a position that most will say it's not a salary position?
Yeah.
You don't have any voting power. Um, what is your inspiration? What is your motivation?
Yeah.
So
Yes. So I grew up in Fairfax, Virginia, in the suburbs of DC, and really grew up loving DC. I would come into the city all the time. We had at one point Wizards season tickets, and so we would come in to see Wizards games, just restaurants and just different activities. And so I spend a lot of my summers interning or working in DC. And so when I'm an attorney, and so after graduating law school, I wanted to come back to the area. And so I'm a voting rights attorney. I work at an organization called Fair Vote. They do ranked choice voting advocacy around the country. And I truly believe in democracy. I've dedicated my life to fighting for everyone to have the right to cast a meaningful vote. And yet here we are in DC, denied that right. Everyone who lives here does not have the right to vote for, have a voting representative in the Senate or in the Congress. And so I live in Ward 2. I live kind of at the border of Mount Vernon Triangle, Logan Circle neighborhoods. And I got involved in the fight for DC statehood when I moved into the city proper after law school. And so I've been involved in the different advocacy efforts. There was a period of time after the 2020 election when we really thought we had a shot to make statehood happen. And I was attending, involved in that advocacy. There was a lot. I don't know if people have seen the statehood for the people of DC yard signs, but I helped put up the yard signs. Just those kinds of organizational tasks. And then unfortunately, we had the Republicans win the House, and they started attacking DC. And so the different bills that DC passed, they were trying to veto them to overturn them. And so I started showing up to the hearings, to the rallies, fighting back against that. And then there was one particular moment last year when DC passed a revised criminal code. And unfortunately, Congress overturned that law. And I thought there was a failure of leadership there, where we had an opportunity to to fight back and to protect that law, which is passed by our elected officials, from being overturned. And we just didn't engage properly. We didn't have the right advocacy to stop that. And unfortunately, that law was overturned by Congress. And so that's when I started thinking that maybe I should run for this position. I've engaged in legislative advocacy both at Fair Vote and then in my previous position at the Sierra Club doing environmental advocacy, environmental law. And so I have some of those experiences with the legislative process. And it's an issue that I'm very passionate about, that, we deserve the right to vote just like every other American citizen. And it was an issue where I thought this position can make an impact, and it maybe wasn't being used as effectively as it could up until now. And so that's what led me to decide I wanted to run for this position. I threw my hat in the ring in September of last year for the Democratic primary. And then the incumbent, Senator Michael D. Brown, decided not to run for re-election, and it became an open seat. And then we just went from there. And, it's something where I didn't want to just yell at a computer screen and say, like, we should do this or that. And I thought, let me take a crack at it and see what I can do. And so that's why I decided to run.
Interesting. So I heard, well, I do hear a theme of support for ranked choice voting. Mm-hmm. I definitely personally am a supporter of ranked choice voting myself as well. But I have an interesting question. First, I would assume that you were in support of I-83 as a whole. Mm-hmm. But assuming that you are, it doesn't look like our council or executive office will fund it. So as shadow senator, what steps would you take to get it I-83 actually funded and going? And not allow our council to just keep kind of sidestepping it so that it'll never happen.
Yeah. Well, yes, I am a strong supporter. I actually helped write part of Initiative 83, and I've been involved with that, with the effort since before actually it was a ballot initiative. It started out as a law before the council, and it became clear the council wasn't going to pass it. So we went the ballot initiative route. It passed 73 to 27%. So that's almost a 40%, over a 40% margin right there. Clearly, it passed by over 65% in every ward of the city. It actually won every single precinct in the city. Not a single precinct voted against Initiative 83. And so I think that what that shows you is the people of DC really want ranked choice voting and letting independents vote in primaries starting in 2026. And so I'm actually already engaged in the efforts on the congressional side to protect it from congressional veto, right? Because this bill, like any law or ballot initiative, we actually has to wait 30 legislative days to go into effect from when it's first transmitted to Congress, and to give Congress an opportunity to veto it. Like when they gave us home rule, they said, yeah, you can have some power, but we're going to keep some for ourselves. And so, we're working on it, and we're hopeful that we can. I would say we're confident that we can protect it from congressional veto. So I think that is one of the first steps, is making sure that Congress doesn't veto this bill before it even becomes law. And so I'm working with the Make All Votes Count team and different advocates to make sure that we have the votes to protect Initiative 83. And then on the council side, I wouldn't be so, pessimistic, Pastor Mike. I think that the council is, saw the vote just like we all did, and saw how strongly people supported it. And what I'll say is that I've already I'm doing my job to make sure that Initiative 83 is defended before Congress. And we all support statehood here in DC because we want the will of the people in DC to be respected. We want what the people want to actually become law. And I think it's time for the council to do their job and make sure that the will of the voters is respected and that they fund this initiative that passed so overwhelmingly. So I'm hopeful that they will. I think that they realize that it might not be a good look for them to stop something from becoming law that was so overwhelmingly supported.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Ankit, it seems like the Democratic Party, including the candidate you ran against, he's a longtime Democratic Party
Mhm.
official, Eugene DeWitt Kinlow, sort of been in the party ranks for a long time.
Mhm.
And the party ranks themselves sort of came out against I-83. I wouldn't say ranks, but the leaders or
Yeah.
the top of the party.
Mhm.
Um, so that must have been a heck of a sort of contrast for you to be running for
Mhm.
statehood and running for this position and seeking Democratic votes in the party, in the rank and file, but having sort of the leadership sort of push back a bit on I-83. And what was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was clear to me as I was talking to voters that people thought it was a good idea, that it made sense. And so for me, I always try to like my guiding light is the voters. What do the voters want? And maybe the people in power don't agree, but that's okay because at the end of the day, the people who make the decisions about who's elected are the voters. And so that's where I was looking to is making sure that I'm in line with what the voters of the city want. And I think that actually within the Democratic Party, there was a divide on Initiative 83. Some of the top leadership opposed it, but if you look actually among the elected members of the DC Democratic Party, a lot of them were actually supporting Initiative 83. And so that was a sign to me that the party is, not so as a party is not even so strongly committed to this being against Initiative 83. And so I was just, I've been supporting it for a long time, and I'm not going to change my position just to, even if it would have won me a few votes, right? I think that people should know what I stand for, and if you don't like it, then don't vote for me. That's fine. That's your right. But I've been a strong supporter from the start, and it just seemed like it was something where when you talk to voters about it, that they mostly agreed with me when I was saying I was supporting it, and so. I don't think that it was something that was like a huge challenge for me because there was such strong support. It was honestly more of a challenge for the other side to try to oppose it when it was so well supported. And one thing, I just want to say one thing about it is that I think there was some misinformation amongst especially people in the leadership about how would this work for Black communities, for disadvantaged communities, and some arguments that it would be harmful. And I know that people in politics, you don't care, the data and the facts don't matter that much. It gets a little bit emotional, but I do think that we should look at the data on some of this stuff. And they've done studies on ranked choice voting, and the studies have found that often Black voters actually are more likely to rank candidates than white voters, and that they use it more effectively, and that Black candidates benefit from the vote transfer that happens. And then one of the things that people don't talk about that I try to stress is, we have one election in DC under the current system that works differently than every other system. That's the at-large election and the general election. For that election, you get 2 votes. Every other election, you get 1 vote. And there are so many people who don't know that you get 2 votes just for that one race. And I'm not, it's not surprising to me if the rest of your ballot is one way. How would you know that one race is slightly different? I have friends who didn't vote, didn't give a second vote. I know a lot of people across the city don't give that second vote because they're not aware of it, and that is especially true, I think, east of the river, where people undervote because of that in that one race. And under Initiative 83, under ranked choice voting, every election will be the same. You rank your candidates 1 through 5, including in the at-large general election. And so I think that will significantly decrease the undervoting we have, which is disproportionately east of the river, and make sure that east of the river communities have more political power in that election, which determines 4 of our 13 council members.
I like that. I want to shift slightly to DC statehood. We talked about it, but one of the things you said is that you specifically have a plan to make statehood happen. I'm interested into what that plan is.
Yeah. So I'll start out by saying that, I think it's going to be unlikely, unfortunately, that statehood happens in the next 4 years under President Trump. He is not the biggest fan of DC. I'm always hopeful, and I'm open to, some people have suggested some sort of trade or something like that. I'm open to it. If somebody comes to me and says, what would you say about DC statehood for X? I don't, I'm definitely open to considering it. But barring that, I think probably we're going to have to wait for a new president to come in. But that's going to happen. We're going to have another election in 2028, and I think that statehood is most likely to happen if Democrats, have control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency, because it should not be a partisan issue, right? This is a human rights issue. This is just we're 700,000 tax-paying American citizens who are denied the right to vote. We're the same as everybody else in the country. We just want the same rights everyone else has. But it has become, in Washington, D.C., a partisan issue. And by Washington, D.C.,
I want to ask you, because of this recent election, and the change specifically amongst the Latino X community, do you think it would now be it would be less of a partisan issue to ask for statehood and include Puerto Rico as a state, where Puerto Rico could maybe lean towards right and we could lean towards left? Could that be an argument?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. That's exactly the kind of trades, I'm thinking about. If somebody comes in and says, Puerto Rico, self-determination for Puerto Rico in exchange for DC statehood, 100%, I think that I would be in support of that. And it's something that we need to explore more. I've been talking with Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton's team, and so that's something I would want to talk with them a little bit about too. It's definitely something that I think, that I would support. The one thing I would say is that I think probably we should, there's a bill for Puerto Rico, and it would have a binding referendum. And then whatever voters decide, whether it's statehood, whether it's independence, or whether it's, I think they call it enhanced autonomy or like enhanced territory status, whatever they choose, that's what gets implemented. And I'm 100% for that trade. And so I think that those kinds of opportunities are there, and I'm definitely going to explore them. And so we'll see what happens with that. But if that's not possible, if that doesn't happen, then yeah, I think 4 years from now, we're going to have another election where we will have an opportunity to have a better president and a better Congress. And my hope is that, the pendulum is always swinging one way and the other. So at some point, the Democrats are going to win again. And when they do, I want to make sure we're ready. The statehood bill, it's passed the House of Representatives twice already. And so I'm confident when Democrats have the majority in the House, we'll pass it again out of the House of Representatives. In the Senate has been the big issue. This Congress that's about to end, we probably have 48 or 49 votes for DC statehood. There's been 2 Democrats who have been, pretty consistently opposed. They're more conservative Democrats, Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, and they're both leaving Congress. They're retiring. And so I'm confident that the next Democratic majority in the Senate will be a pro-statehood majority. And I've been talking with people in the voting rights community, along with other statehood advocates, to get statehood in a broader voting rights, national voting rights package. So getting it as part of a bill, or a package, I should say, its own bill as a part of a package that would also make it easier to vote, ban gerrymandering, get money out of politics, make it get rid of racial gerrymandering and things like that, and then DC statehood. And so if we can get it as keep it as part of the package that we kind of put it in right now, I want to pass that package out of the House. On the Senate, I'm confident we'll have 50 votes, but we also need to deal with the filibuster. The filibuster means that you need 3/5 or 60 votes to end debate and pass a bill. And so it takes 60 votes to end, to get around a filibuster, but it only takes 50 votes to change the rules around the filibuster. And so want to get an exception to the filibuster for voting rights issues for this voting rights package. And the reason I think we can do that is because we basically tried that in 2022, and we were 2 votes shy. And the 2 who voted against were the same 2 I just mentioned, Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, who are retiring from Congress. And so with them gone, I think I just want to run it back. And I think that with a better Senate majority, we will be successful in getting that bill passed through simple majority out of the Senate. And the Democratic presidents have historically supported DC statehood. And so I'm confident whoever our next president is, Democratic president is, will sign it into law.
I just want to emphasize and remind everybody, just in case you're wondering, uh, even though it's the title of a shadow senator, the shadow senator does get 6 years in
Mhm.
their term. So you can play the long-term game, and you can plan for the next presidential election. In case anyone was wondering, oh, well, how
Yeah.
long does he have? Well, yes, so cheers.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to remind everyone that.
Mhm.
Moving along to our next.
Yep.
Did anyone have any more
That actually
questions? Any of
was
my
going to be my
co-hosts?
next question. But thank you for addressing that. Because I'm telling you, new voters, they're coming to the polls
Yeah.
and they're voting for people that their family members are voting for,
Yeah.
or somebody that says, well, I heard about this guy,
Mm.
let's vote for him, or I heard about her, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes.
They're brand new at the polls, and this is the first time that they're doing it, and they don't know the term length. They don't know exactly because I've had young people to ask me, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, y'all got these Apple phones and Androids and you won't Google
Yeah.
because y'all Google everything else.
Yeah.
Pastor Mike, before we jump to the next topic, I mean, on this, Ankit, it's very clear, and I'm very happy to hear. I've been in the statehood Green Party for 25 years, and so obviously statehood is number one in our platform. It's in our name. So, I love the push. I love the energy around that. Of course, the Democrats have been in power twice
Mhm.
with control of president and the two chambers and didn't
Yeah.
do anything with it.
Mhm.
And so I'm happy to hear you're going to push them to do better.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, you now have a Republican
Yeah.
administration coming in that's going to control both houses.
Mhm.
And it's been made clear by Donald Trump that he wants to just take over the city. He wants to go the other direction. It's like it's going to be completely his city. It's not going to be statehood. It's going to be his domain, his fiefdom. What are you going to do? How are you going to approach that? Given, I mean, it's a completely different direction, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so we got to play defense, a lot of defense right now, in stopping things from getting worse and from Trump from taking away even more rights than we have. And so we're getting prepared. We're talking strategy and seeing what we can do. I think that to try to get to the Republicans, you really have to speak to their interests and to their language, because they don't really care about the people of DC. I got to be honest with you. They're focused on their own reelection and what they can signal to their constituents by beating up on DC. And so we have to think about what do they want and how can we make the argument to them. And so I'll just give you one example. There's some talk about eliminating home rule entirely and getting rid of our local government and having it go back to Congress controlling everything about us. And the argument I've been making to these Republican offices is that that you don't want that for yourself. I mean, right now you can blame the liberals for everything that bad that happens in DC, but if you do this, it's everything is your fault, and you better believe that we're going to be blaming you for the problems. And this is not something that would benefit you politically to take away DC's rights and for you to have to manage the government for a pretty large city, right? That there are things that have to happen. Trash needs to get picked up. The trains need to run. And do you want to spend your time doing that when you could be doing other things? And so those kinds of arguments are the ones that I'm going to be trying to make to these Republicans to try to get them to stop them from attacking us and taking away our rights. And the one other thing I'll say is that we do still have right now in the Senate the filibuster, and so as long as that continues to exist, there's 53 Republicans who are going to be in the Senate next Congress, and you need 60 votes to get around the filibuster. And so they're going to have to get Democratic senators to support for a lot of the things they're trying to do. And so if we can keep the Democratic senators, have them hold firm and stop not vote with the Republicans on these issues, we can still win. And so that's where we're working.
Okay.
And can I just say one more thing on the because you mentioned the Democrats had the majority, the full control twice, and it didn't happen. And one of the things I hear a lot is that DC stated we've been trying for years, it's never going to happen. And what I would respond is that actually I don't think it's been that long since DC stated has been the number one priority amongst all the vast majority of us here in DC. If you remember back when Obama was president in 2008, 2009, 2010. They actually weren't going for statehood. The goal was to have Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton to give her a vote in the House. So still no senators, still no not full self-government, but have Eleanor Holmes Norton have a vote. And that actually almost passed. The at the last minute, there was a poison pill added in where they were like, and you have to repeal all your gun laws for this to pass. But that wasn't statehood. We weren't fighting for statehood back then. The statehood push really only started, I would say, in like 2016. Maybe around that time. And because back before we all got on the same page, used to be that the Statehood Green Party was the only supporter of full statehood. The Democratic Party actually did not support full statehood until just a few years ago. And that's why you have it in the name, right? You were saying Statehood Green because they were pointing out that they were the only ones who supported statehood since, early days, 70s or even before. And so really since 2016 is when we've had a consensus amongst ourselves that statehood is the way we're going to go. And in that period of time, we passed the bill out of the House twice. We've only had unified control of government once. And that one time, like I said, we had a Senate majority that really hinged on some more conservative Democrats. And so I think if we get a better Senate majority, I'm confident we'll be able to pass it into law. And I don't think people should assume just because it hasn't happened yet, it's not going to happen. Because a lot of things took a long time, before they happened, and it seemed like it wasn't going to happen for a while. And then all of a sudden, the conditions were right, and we got it through. I mean, like look at healthcare reform, Obamacare, right? People have been talking about that since like the 1980s, maybe even earlier. And there was a huge push under Bill Clinton, and that failed. And people could have said, well, it's never going to happen. Let's just pack up and go home. But that's not what happened. People kept on fighting. They kept on pushing. And then when President Obama got elected, they saw the opportunity and we did it. And so that's exactly what I think we can see happen with DC statehood.
So, excuse me, guys, I just need to ask them, what can the local community members do to support you as our shadow senator?
Yeah. Well, I would say not just me. How can we support DC as a whole, right? Like
as a whole,
I'm just one person trying to fight for DC. We got a bunch of people here, and so let me say that I think the effort is right now. It's going to be mostly defensive over the next 2 years, but people are organizing. So actually, like literally right now as we speak, there's a meeting of this new group called Defend DC happening. Right near the Anacostia Metro. I forget exactly the name of the location where it's at, where they are talking about what we can do, exactly that question, as just regular citizens to defend home rule and defend our rights in DC. And they have a good group going where they're going to kind of be the people on the ground and fighting back and protecting our rights. So what I would say is if you go on Instagram or Twitter or social media and search Defend DC, they will you can follow them and they post updates there on the kind of actions that they're taking. There's going to be a working group for specifically on the issue of DC autonomy that I'm going to on Monday. It's Monday at 5:45 p.m. at the Southwest Library in kind of waterfront area. And so that is a group that is really needs support and is going to be active in taking actions and defending our rights. So that's one thing is, get involved in these kinds of rallies and protests and strategic planning on what we can do. The second thing I'll say is just talk to your friends and family members about statehood. There are people in DC who, aren't fully on the statehood bandwagon. And I think a lot of them, they don't quite understand what's at stake. And some of them are, just misinformed about something. I was just at an event with the Anacostia Coordinating Council, their holiday party yesterday, and someone pointed out that said that one of her friends was opposed to statehood because she thought if DC becomes a state, all of the local government benefits would be taken away. Well, that's not true. Actually, we get more benefits because we lose an average of $2 billion a year in taxes because we're not a state, because we can't tax people who live outside of DC but work in DC. And so we'd actually have more money for more benefits if DC became a state. So I would say talk to your friends and family, dispel some myths, and talk about the impacts on our everyday life of the lack of statehood. I mean, there's so many. I'll just mention one of them is that crime. I think we have a higher crime rate than a lot of other big cities because we're not a state. We have a weird federal local hybrid justice system where the police department is locally controlled, but the prosecutor is federally controlled, and all of our judges are nominated by the president of the United States and confirmed by the Senate. And so one is that we don't have enough judges. Like confirming the local DC judges is always the last on the Senate priority list, whether it's Democratic majority or Republican majority in the Senate. In fact, I'm trying to get a meeting right now with Schumer's office to get them to confirm some of these judges before this chamber ends. And, it's not so easy to get a meeting. They have bigger fish to fry, I guess. So if anybody has a contact with Chuck Schumer, and his team, I definitely would like to talk to them about that. We don't have enough judges. And what does that mean? It means that cases are delayed. People who are accused of crimes don't have a verdict rendered, and the cases go on. And that both means one is that somebody who might be innocent has this verdict hanging over their head and they can't get closure. And two, the people who are actually guilty are not punished, right? People are out on the streets who committed these crimes because the justice system is not going fast enough because we're not a state. And so that is just one example. There's so many of what happens like in our everyday lives because we're not a state. And so talk to people in your life about that in DC about why they should support statehood. And if you have family and friends outside of the city, especially we need you to talk to your family and friends because those people actually have a vote, right? They have senators and members of Congress who can vote on these issues. And so tell them to call their senators and congressmen and say, hey, I'm a constituent of yours. I support DC statehood and I support DC home rule. Don't vote for the statehood bill and don't vote for any of these bills taking away DC's rights.
I want to show one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
Another one of your campaign promises talks about affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about a local HIKE Act that will allow the city to construct more affordable housing and lower housing costs for families in the city.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to, we don't have too much time left, but would like you to go into detail about something that is very dear to my heart. I do serve on the DC for the housing committee. I'm a part of the Marshall Heights Civic Association. In Ward 7, and housing is an issue all throughout our city. Even as a pastor, it's something that you come across that people need help and are constantly looking for assistance and resources. So can you go into detail about, as a shadow senator, how you plan to influence elected officials in DC and in the government to help this crisis which we have here in our city?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the issues that I hear about the most is just how expensive it is to live in the city. And it's something I personally experienced. I'm a renter, and so actually dealing right now with trying not to get my rent increase for the next year. I'm negotiating with the landlord and trying to make sure that that I'm not seeing the huge increase from my yearly rent. And so every year it feels like the rent is going up and up and up. And why there's a huge there's two things going on here. One is there's a huge displacement issue, right? Where people are being displaced out of the city, often Native Washingtonians, often multi-generation Washingtonians. And one of the main reasons for that is just it's so expensive to live here, right? You talk to people and it feels like half of PG County like lived in DC at one point, and had to move because it's just so expensive to live in the city, and we got to do something about that. If we're serious about protecting helping people in the city, we got to lower housing costs. And so there's people being displaced out of the city. There's people who want to come to the city and make often make the world a better place, work for a nonprofit or the federal government, who are being deterred from even coming here because the housing costs are so high, and who could really improve our city. And then there's just everybody who lives here who just is paying too much for housing, right? And so it's such an important issue. And there's a bunch of different solutions. There's not one solution that's a magic bullet to solving the housing crisis. But one of the ways the federal government directly impacts DC, and that's kind of where I'm focused because my position is focused on the federal government's impact with DC. One of the ways the federal government impacts DC is they have a Height Act, a federal Height Act in DC, which is that there's a congressional law that says how tall buildings can be in the city. Well, I don't think that a senator from Massachusetts or Wyoming should be telling us how tall our buildings should be in the city. I want to replace the federal Height Act with our own local Height Act that's informed by the perspectives and needs of the people of DC, where you can go to your council members and say, this is what I want and this is what I don't want. And so I'll be working to replace that federal Height Act with a local Height Act and going to Congress and say, we don't need your federal Height Act. Let's make it push it down to the local level. And I think this is something where we can get some bipartisan support. So it's something that we could actually move in the next 2 to 4 years, because the Republicans, they always talk about local control, right? Local government knows best. And so it is something where I've heard from Republicans. There's a congressman named Darrell Issa, for example, who's a Republican from California, who's been supportive of what I'm talking about. It is something I think where we can take action. And if we can get rid of that, replace that federal Height Act with our own local Height Act, we can build more affordable housing in the city, and make it so that people have more options about where they can live. And that should reduce housing costs and reduce displacement, make it so more people can move in here without raising rents, and just reduce rents for everybody across the city. I think it'll be a huge it's so important for people of DC, and it'll be a huge boon to the city, because now you're also talking about the potential for having new our population grow because people are staying here and not being displaced, and new people are coming in who are paying taxes into the city, right? And whose tax money can be used to fund other services. So I think it's really a win-win-win. It's something I've been very focused on.
Ankit, pointedly, earlier you said we should be acting off the basis of data, not emotions.
Yeah.
And so when I hear that, I say that, how does giving developers the ability to build more luxury housing in bigger buildings and bigger, more dense buildings, how does that reduce prices?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, there would be affordable housing set aside. So some percentage of this would be affordable housing. I think we need to make sure that we enforce that, and we get enough affordable, and especially it's called deeply affordable housing, which is housing that actually like poor people can afford, because affordable housing in DC often is not actually affordable by poor people. And so make sure that we can get deeply affordable and affordable housing built. The other thing, though, is that I do think that it's important to build more market rate housing. And the reason for that is because right now, when we have a housing shortage, it gives the landlords all the power, right? The landlords say, I'm going to raise your rent, and you as a renter have nowhere else to go, because any other place you're looking at, the rent is just as high or probably even higher. If you're building more housing in this city, a landlord comes to you and says, I'm going to raise your rent. You can be like, okay, well, I'm going to go to this other unit that in this other building that was just built right next door. Why would I pay $200 more in rent when I could go to this new unit and actually pay like $200 less in rent a month? And so what I want to do is give negotiating power to the renters and to the regular people, so that they have the power in the situation, and it's not the landlords.
Can I just follow up on that? Again, I want to speak to the data. Mm-hmm. You said there's a housing shortage. Are you aware there's 30,000 vacant units in the city pre-COVID?
Yeah, I mean, I have seen the vacancy data. I guess what I would say is that if you look at the studies that they've done and say, does building more housing reduce rents both across the city and in individual neighborhoods where they're built, the answer is always yes. They've done a lot of studies on this, and they found that it reduces rents for everybody. If you look at
I would love to. I could share. I mean, there's so much data that shows the opposite, actually, because the luxury units that are being built actually increases the value of the land so much that the existing naturally occurring affordable housing gets displaced.
Yeah.
I guess what I wanted to, I get the whole supply and demand argument. Isn't that kind of out the window, though, when you have all the major real estate companies colluding? I don't know if you've seen that. The attorney general has sued, I don't know, the top 15 major real estate firms in the city for colluding the price fix. So how does building more of the same, if the collusion is happening,
Yeah.
how does that reduce prices?
Yeah, I definitely think we need to enforce those laws, and our attorney general has been doing amazing work on that and other issues. And so we need to make sure that these landlords and these property owners are not colluding. But if you look at the studies, it still shows that even with all this happening, you're still seeing reductions in rent when you build more housing. And then we can't discount the fact that a lot of these will be affordable units, right? They have to be by law.
So that's my next question. I don't mean to cut you off. We were running out of time, but basically, how do you define affordable? Because if you want to push more density and more, and therefore more luxury units that put more pressure on people like me and Sean and others, the issue is, how does the city define what affordable is? And unfortunately, right now it's based on AMI. Yeah. And AMI is the area median income, and it's going up. It's a hockey stick explosion of AMI right now. Yeah. AMI is at about $160,000 a year for a family of four. And so when you take 80% of that, that's what the city defines as an affordable unit, 80% of the AMI. Sometimes it gets down to 50%. Your 30% AMI is your public housing units. So the units you're talking about are between 50 and 80%. In any new building, 8% of the new units are required to be in that range. So we're talking about a handful of new units. You build a 100-unit building, you're getting 8 units at that 50 to 80% AMI. You're talking about units that are costing $2,800 a month. So if those are your affordable units under this policy, how would ever the prices come down?
Well, that's why I talk about deeply affordable, right? Because you need to make it so it's really like you talked about 50-80. We need housing for like 20 to 50% of AMI, or even like 10% of AMI. And so we need to make sure we're building deeply affordable housing as well. And the other thing I'll say is that, like I said, there's no magic bullet solution. So I don't think this should be done just in a vacuum. I mean, I think it's important, but I think there are other things that the council can do that would also like supplement this work. So for example, like we have rent control, but it's a very weak form of rent control. There's so many loopholes. We don't really have that many buildings that are under rent control. Maybe the council can expand rent control and cover more buildings.
Where are you at on social housing? Have you heard about social housing?
That's actually literally what I was about to bring up. Councilmember Janice Lewis-George has a Green New Deal bill to build a ton of social housing, which is basically housing built by the government, but not just low-income housing. It's a mix of low-income housing and more market rate housing. And the market rate housing subsidizes low-income housing, so it's more revenue neutral. And so, I mean, I think that's a great idea. I think we should. It would be good for the council to look into that and work on the social housing issue as well. If we can do an all of the above strategy, I think that's the solution to reducing our housing costs. I do think that this HIDE Act issue is a problem, and it's something we need to address to help reduce our housing crisis.
Hey, Ankit, there's one more thing. Could I get you to stick with us for about 5 more minutes?
Sure.
I did want to play a video of a Washingtonian who has a complaint, and I would love to get your response, whether as a citizen, or a regular Washingtonian, or as a shadow senator. And then I wanted to get your thoughts. I wanted to talk a little bit about Biden pardoning Hunter. So about 5 or 6 more minutes. Can I get you to stick around? Folks, stick around. I see we starting to get more listeners tuning in and viewers. Stick around with us for about 5 more minutes. Let's view this video real quick and let's have a brief discussion on it.
So look, there are no performances at the DC Holiday Market, and there are no performances at the Downtown Holiday Market. I don't even know what was going on at Downtown Holiday Market. So let me explain something to you. Downtown Holiday Market used to be managed by Diverse Markets. Diverse Markets. Some shady stuff went down, and we tried to save it. We did a petition on change.org and everything, but DC government was set on switching. Fine. So Diverse Markets created DC Holiday Markets and went uptown to DuPont Circle. Vendors, they had their own thing. Downtown Holiday Market got their own thing. We were slated to perform at DC Holiday Market because we went with Diverse Markets. We're not playing down at the Downtown Holiday Market because we weren't. We ain't been with whoever that is. We've been with Diverse Markets. So we went with Diverse Markets. Well, DC government decides, I'm shutting it all down. So there's no music at DC Holiday Market. I don't know if there was anything down at Downtown Holiday Market, but Eastern Market, Farmers Market, all of them, they still got music. They still got music. So we're losing a lot of money. I don't say boycott the Downtown Holiday Market because those vendors still need to eat. They've been working hard. They still need to eat. And those were friends of mine from back in the day. They still got to eat. They're caught in the middle. You know what they're going to do? Not eat. Not, you know what I'm saying? Still patronize them. However, DC government is to blame for it. All right? So we've been playing there for over 10 years. And now all of a sudden, there's none whatsoever. So I apologize for any inconvenience. I know a lot of people come see me there at the holiday market because they don't go to the clubs. They don't go to those things. And it's free. You know, I'm going to miss y'all this year. Thank you, DC government. Shady, shady, shady. Well,
Young lady wanted to be heard. Her needs to be met, and I wanted to give her a voice. After all, this is the People's Voice DC. What are you guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say one thing, which is that I feel like this is a perfect example of like the DC government, the kind of things that the way it works and the things that happen where you can't even run a holiday market properly. I mean, are you kidding me? And this is just like, there's so many examples. You talk about 911. I don't know if you all have called 911. I have. And I was on hold for like more than 2 minutes, maybe more than 5 minutes. I'm trying to remember how it was. And I hung up because it wasn't like an urgent issue. And I couldn't, spend like half an hour on hold with 911. And the average wait time for 911 is something like 2 or 3 minutes. That's the average wait time. So that means half of them are actually more than that. And if you're in an urgent situation,
my personal experience, whenever I call 911, I'll usually go on my phone and tweet the issue and tag DC 311 and the police. And I usually get a quicker response on social media.
Yep.
It's sad.
Yeah, I mean,
I can attest to that.
Just like, these issues. I mean, I don't know if any of you follow the gambling, the sports gambling situation where they gave a no bid contract to one company that seemed to have some connections with people with DC government, and that app just did not work. Like people could not use that app. It actually lost money, which sounds funny, but it means that we as taxpayers don't get tax benefits from of revenue from that. And so all of these problems you have, DC government, it feels like not working for people who need it. It's got to change. It does sometimes feel like people are not hired who can actually do the job to these agencies, and then we all suffer because of that. and there's not enough like urgency in fixing the problem. And so it's just another example of like these are the kinds of things that happen when you have a government that's not working for regular people.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, going back to social housing, this is why I caution about, starting off the affordable housing conversation with like, let's remove the HIDE Act, because that's an easy, I mean, they're gonna do that. They could do that. They could push for that pretty quickly and give all the density to the developers without fixing the broken IZ policy, for example, right? And we'll just be doubling down on the displacement. So I think the policy issues here, in the contrast, right, where they're messing up these things. 9/11, I was on a call for, I was assaulted, and I was I called 911, and I literally hung up. Because like I actually saw a cop car and I waved him down, because it was faster. I was on hold for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so the point I guess I'm trying to make is, you contrast that to social housing.
Yeah.
And that's been in committee for more than 2 years. We had a 13-hour hearing on it. And we all know that is one of the key answers to the affordable housing crisis, and will actually solve things and create really vibrant communities while allowing a mix of incomes to stay in their communities for the long term, no matter what happens with their jobs, whether their income goes up or down. You're not paying more than 30% of your income to housing. So to me, it's like the things like the stadium bill downtown, that the turnaround time on that was like 4 months. I know they just passed it. They're passing it now. But the deal with Ted Leonesis, a billionaire, a multi-billionaire, to get $500 million in taxpayer dollars was turned around in months. And yet we have things like social housing stuck in committee. We have the call center stuff goes back to Catania.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? So it's just, wow, what are the priorities, right?
Yeah. And by the way, that's why I say replace the federal HIDE Act with our own local HIDE Act, because that's when the negotiation happens and we say, hey, we want more social housing. Let's do it together. And so that's my hope, that we can then have people come in as us as Washingtonians who actually, elect these council members and get what's best for us.
Unfortunately, we might get places like Union Market then, which, I mean, out of 6,000 new housing units on the the 40 acres, that is Union Market, 6,000, I mean, I don't know if you've been over there. It's 6,000 new luxury units, 1,000 new hotel units. Guess how many family-sized affordable units that got required by the Office of Planning, the Mayor's Office of Planning, out of those 6,000? Take a guess. Just take a guess.
Oh, man, I'm bad at this. 500, 1,000?
10.
10.
Family size. So I'm talking like 3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
10
And
out of the
what's the
6,000. So we
required?
granted all this density to the developers. And that's why I'm speaking from that lived experience. I've known people there. We got displaced from there for a luxury hotel. And when I say we, I'm talking about a artist collective.
Yeah.
And so we saw what happened there, and it's like they're going to love the idea of like, yeah, we need more density, because they'll start with that. But the underlying policies about affordability and what requirements are for that affordability and the volume of affordability, if that stays where it is now, they'll be like, yeah, let's do the density right away. But the broken policies will stay in place, and we'll get 10 affordable family-sized units out of 6,000.
Mm-hmm. And so you said, by the way, Pastor Mike, you had one other thing. I just wanted to make sure we got to that as well.
You're muted.
Yeah, I'm muted. Just wanted to get everyone's quick opinion. Are you in agreement with Biden pardoning Hunter? And do you think anyone else should be pardoned? Maybe Trayon White? Anyone can jump in.
I'll say on the Hunter thing is that I think it was a bad idea. I mean,
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing. Yeah. You're gonna pardon your son before you exit office. I ain't gonna say too much on this. I'm gonna mute myself.
I mean, I get the human aspect of it. Like obviously a dad wants to help his kid, but you got to look at the broader picture. I think that Trump. People say that it's going to help Trump do something. Trump was always going to pardon people, so I don't think anybody's was under any impression that this changes who Trump is going to pardon. But I do think that it makes it just it makes people more distrustful of the whole institutions, and Trump is, that's what leads to someone like Trump. People are like, all these people are just out for themselves. I'm going to vote for the guy who's going to burn it down. And so I don't think that's the right way to go.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it sets up Trump to pardon everybody in a bad way. And while we're at it, why isn't Biden, who's Democratic Party, is supposed to represent the party of justice, workers, environment? Where's the pardons for Mumia Abu-Jamal or Leonard Peltier, right? Like, I mean, let's get serious. You're gonna pardon your son for a bunch of craziness, but we have real justice fighters. All the Black Panthers that are still in jail that were illegally hunted down by the FBI. I mean, there's just, the list can go on, right?
That part, though.
Well, Ankit, we really enjoyed you, sir. I look forward to having you represent us for the next 6 years. Hopefully, we can get together, do some events together.
Yeah.
But I definitely
I
look
have a
forward.
closing question.
Sure.
How can people contact you?
Yeah.
About their issues?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a good question. So first of all, yeah, Pastor Mike, I would love to continue to work together on different issues. In terms of how to contact me, so I am going to have an office in the DC government building, and we'll have an office number and I'm going to get a DC government email. Right now, let me give you. I'm going to give you my campaign email, which is Ankit ANKIT at Jain JAIN 4FORDC.com. If you want to also email info at Jain4DC.com, that'll make sure my chief of staff sees it, and you're flagged. It's flagged both ways. But I am once I get actually sworn in, I'll have an office number and a DC government email I can give people, and people can email me anytime. But maybe I'll get that to you once it happens. We can share it via socials or something like that, Pastor Mike. But the one thing I'll say is that I do hope that people, if they're having problems with the federal government, Delegate Norton is always someone you can call, but you can also call my office when I'm sworn in, and we will do whatever we can to help you. We do have staff whose job it is to help people navigate the federal government. And so, if I don't know if you have Social Security issues, you have Social Security benefits, if something is going on when it relates to the federal government, or you just have an opinion on something the federal government is doing to DC or should be doing with DC, feel free to call the office. Feel free to email us, and I'm very interested in hearing your opinions.
Thanks so much, Ankit, and congrats again. Happy holidays.
Pastor Mike, thank you for that.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Mike. Peace and blessings, y'all.
Same.
And I'll just end the show on a personal note by talking about holiday, this holiday stress, this holiday mood we can be in. I just want everyone to be aware that I am praying for you guys. I want us to pray for our neighbors that may be feeling financial stress, fatigue, unrealistic expectations, folks that may be missing their loved ones. I want you to know that we at the People's Voice are thinking of you. We're praying for you, and we do know that you matter too. Let's keep our neighbors lifted up. Let's show everyone the joy and the love that is meant to be spread throughout this holiday season. And we'll see you next week. Next week, we're going to have a great moment with the awesome group and I can't wait to introduce you guys to them. See you next time. People's Voice.
Decades, generations. I don't.